You're listening to The Higher Ed Marketer, a podcast geared towards marketing professionals in higher education. This show will tackle all sorts of questions related to student recruitment, donor relations, marketing trends, new technologies, and so much more. If you're looking for conversations centered around where the industry is going, this podcast is for you. Let's get into the show.
Welcome to the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast. I'm Troy Singer, and along with my co-host and Kevin Hart joke writer, Bart Kaler. And today together, we're going to interview Ethan Braden, who is the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Communications at Purdue University. And he is someone that I feel that is very well known within the higher ed marketing community itself, as being recognized as a dynamic marketer himself, but also leading an award-winning team.
Yeah, Troy, that's great. It's a pleasure to have him back on the show. He was our inaugural guest back on episode 1. We talked with him about his, he was awarded the American Marketer Association Higher Ed Marketer of the Year last year in 2020, as well as his team. So they kind of swept that with the AMA. But he comes back on today. We wanted to talk to him a little bit about the recognition that Purdue University garnered in Fast Company magazine. They were the only university that was recognized as one of the brands that matter. And so we talk with him about that, how that's impacted Purdue, and then how his marketing team is helping to tell those stories. So it's a really good conversation.
He is so inspiring, full of wonderful, appropriate quotes, and I'm excited to pick the brain of the person who is leading one of the country's leading higher ed marketing teams. So here's our conversation with Ethan Braden. It's our pleasure again to welcome Ethan Braden, Senior Vice President of Marketing and Communications at Purdue University, to the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast. Ethan, it's great to see you again, and would love for the people who may not know who you are to give us a little bit about Purdue and a little bit about your role there.
Sure. Well, it's great to be back, guys. Thank you for the opportunity. In terms of Purdue, we're a world-class research institution here in West Lafayette, Indiana, of about 55,000 people right now. Currently, we got the number one basketball team in the nation, which is fantastic, and a Sweet 16 volleyball team and a bowl-bound football team. So it's a good time to be a Boilermaker. But yeah, I serve as the Senior Vice President of Marketing Communications here, the Chief Marketing Officer for President Daniels, and look after a central marketing organization of about 70 individuals, and then a marketing community that spans the campus of about 300. So it's a pleasure. I've been here 3 years. I've got my dream job. I have a get-to job, not a got-to job, and couldn't be happier.
Well, Ethan, it's great to have you back, and really appreciate it. We've got a chance to talk a little bit about a kind of another topic. We talked a little bit about brand the last time. It was in episode 1, and appreciate you being our inaugural episode. But I think that one of the things that we wanted to bring you back on was recently Purdue University has been named one of Fast Company's brands that matter. And I saw that come across in my issue of the magazine. I was really excited. So that recognition honors organizations that give people compelling reasons to care about them, offer inspiration for others, and authentically communicate their missions and their ideals. So tell me a little bit about what that is all about and how that came about.
Yeah, we're tremendously honored to be named to that list. Fast Company magazine's I think a tremendous, innovative, progressive publication. It has been for 20 years now. And we've really aspired to break free and not necessarily win, local market addies or necessarily even appear in inside higher ed, et cetera. But we believe we've got an iconic brand. 600,000 alums and our students on this campus, I think, validate this. And it's a brand that matters, especially today. So to be, chosen as the only university of the 95 honorees there with Nike, 3M, Ford, General Motors, Sonos, Zoom, Yeti, et cetera, was a real honor. We're thrilled in many respects to have that affiliation. And I think it's been very validating for our product, but also our marketers who can see the fruits of their labors and telling a powerful story and mattering in this day and age. So we couldn't be happier.
That's great. And I can speak, and I've been pretty transparent before as a Boilermaker parent. My son's a sophomore, in all transparency for everyone at Purdue. And so I think I can join that community. I've just been so excited to be a part of the Purdue community, even as a parent. It's been exciting. And even in our first episode, we talked about how impressed I was with the Protect Purdue campaign. When my son was entering his freshman year in the middle of the pandemic, it was just refreshing to see that. And I know in the article, you kind of talked about, one of your quotes was the fact that you've got thousands communicating on the behalf of Purdue daily. No one can whistle a symphony alone. It's got to operate like an orchestra. And I just applaud you. And I think that's exactly right. And tell me a little bit about how does that then evolve into this first-class marketing engine that you also talked about into that?
Well, I think, number one is we've got a tremendous product. And so as Jack Butcher says, right, he's like, hey, it's a really busy, noisy world. So what we need are 1,000 people sharing the entire and the same story with the world over and over for some sort of saturation. So we do. We start with an amazing product with amazing support from our board of trustees, Mitch Daniels on down. And our group of 70, has really pivoted, I think, from being the driven on campus, of local needs, of posters, flyers, things we talked about last time, to the driver. And what that meant and what that's meant in 2020 and 2021 is really pivoting to the chief storyteller, really feeling that we're a driver of inspiration, of prosperity and growth at Purdue University by deliberately positioning our brand, promoting our brand, and protecting our brand. And then that spreads beyond the central marketing organization, but to our 13 colleges and the 300 other marketers, communicators, and graphic designers that we see across campus, again, in the Adam Grant spirit of not necessarily on brand, but in character. And how do we share those stories in a unified fashion, localizing to the college, but still under the umbrella of Purdue University, being the very best version of ourselves at Purdue University with the world and parents and students like Bart. So it's been tremendous. But again, it starts with the product, right? They talked about the reasons we won. It's living our brand.
Yep.
Persistent innovation together. It's the data mine, right? That's taking students from all of our 13 colleges and bringing them into a learning, living community, no matter their major, and making them data experts, data fluent, for the days thereafter. Data scientists working together from fashion to pharmacy and everything in between. It's initiatives like the Polytechnic High School, right? When we weren't seeing the underserved, the URM student coming to Purdue with the fervor and the frequency that we wanted, we went out and built our own high schools, 3 of them now in the state of Indiana. And so they're a pathway for students that were usually underserved by traditional high school and underrepresented in higher education. And we just had 40 students, URM students, come to us from that first graduating class, right? That's 4x what we were getting from the entire Indianapolis public school system previously. So it's that commitment to persistently running in when others run out, a commitment to innovation, a commitment to value, and doing it together. But again, when we tell that story, we want to be on the same song sheet. Everyone gets their verse, but we're going to sing the chorus together. And thankfully, that's been well embraced.
That's great. That's great. I appreciate you sharing that. And I appreciate you kind of talking about living the brand. That was in my notes here on the article. When you had the quote, it gave us a playbook to continue to show the world that we are, and the persistent innovation that we stand for, even in the most uncertain of times. Note they're living out the brand. And I think that's really one of the things that I think Fast Company was recognizing in you and put you in the pantheon of those other companies that they have. So, Troy, I know you had a question.
Yeah, and it was about the growing freshman classes that Purdue is experiencing. I know for the second year in a row, you are welcoming your largest freshman class ever, I believe.
Yeah, I think there's 3 things that really shine through in this last year or two. The students and their parents are telling us, this is why we're choosing you, and we're choosing you even more often than we did in the past, right? We've grown 20% in the last 5 years. We essentially added an additional class of 10,000 students to the ranks at Purdue University over the last 5 years. That's incredible, I think, in the state of higher education, in the state of Indiana, and public universities, et cetera. It's bucking the trend that we're seeing nationally otherwise. And so, in-state students are voting with their feet to come here, but out-of-state students are too. And that's what made the big difference this past year. And they've told us 3 things. They've said, number one, your reputation. I know coming to Purdue University, I'm going to get a rigorous education that will pay off, as CNBC noted last year, when I graduate. So I have that great brand. I have that great alumni network. I have that great training to live out the future that I'm aspiring to have, the ambitions that I want to achieve, number one. Number 2, value, right? We just announced our 11th straight year of a tuition freeze. 60,000 students now are going to graduate having never seen the price increase while they were at Purdue University. Families across those 10 years, now 11, are going to save a collective $1 billion versus had we just raised our rates at the average of the Big Ten. And now 60% of our students are graduating debt-free, which we've seen with Generation Z is a huge piece, right? They're debt-averse. And that's versus a national average of about 39%. So they're saying, hey, I can come and not only get this incredible product, the numerator is really good, but the denominator sings too. And it creates an equation of value that's really powerful, whether we cross state lines or we stay in state. And then the last, again, right, speaking to the segment of students that Purdue University appeals to. And I get that. We're not for everybody. The Purdue student and the Pomona student are likely not the same student, and that's why we have to segment. And that's why there's 4,000, degree granting institutions across North America. You spent $50 million to prepare to have the vulnerable protected, to get de-densified a campus and bring us back and give us the most normal, open, and active undergraduate experience you could imagine. We appreciated that. And we want to do that in 21 and 22 and beyond. And so our response to COVID really shines through in our surveys right now of why students, both in-state and out-of-state, are picking Purdue University to come with their 4 years.
I think that's great. And I want to add to that I think that you going back to what you said earlier, Ethan, it's having a product that you can kind of get behind and actually do something with. As marketers, I think sometimes we're kind of given, unfortunately, some higher ed marketers are given this monumental task of selling something that's really not a product that can be sold. And I think that that's a challenge sometimes. And it gets back to, I've quoted you often, the idea of being a short order cook versus a chef. And I think that you have to really have the proper ingredients to really be a chef. And I think that that's one thing that I've noticed at Purdue, having a good product, having, commitment beyond, throughout the entire organization, like you said, from the board to the administration to President Daniels, who are committed to doing the things that are kind of bucking the system, whether it's freezing tuition, whether it's, saying in April of 2020, we are going to come back and we're going to figure out how to do that to give our students a real college experience, because that's what they invested in. That's what create and lead through that branding, create and lead through that marketing. It's one thing to have a great product. It's another thing to have a great support system. But then I think that as marketers, we actually have to do the work to get that to happen. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, as you move from the short order cook to the things that really matter, right? We want to be critical and material to the collective contribution that realizes our goals at Purdue University. Those being the board's goals, Mitch Daniels' goals, our provost goals, et cetera, right? We're not here for marketing dust. I'm not here for logos and colors and pamphlets and, hey, on Friday, can you make this prettier for Monday? I want to tell amazing stories that captivate audiences, that inspire audiences, and create action, right? Whether that means you apply, you come work for us, you move, whatever it may be. Marketing's supposed to create action. It's supposed to create change. We're supposed to be the catalyst to, exceptional experiences with our brands. And so that's the perspective, that's the orientation, that's the empowerment that our team of 70 really needs and wants to have, and the culture that we want to have in terms of the contribution that we're going to give people on a daily basis, right? John Gordon says, hey, driving a positive, high-performing culture requires more than words. After, everyone's got a mission, but what you really need are people who are on a mission. And what I'm seeing in marketing here and a lot of other places across higher education are people on a mission to do great work, represent their brand, create change, create action, ultimately inspire folks with these iconic brands that we have, these iconic brands that people gravitate to, believe in, are defined by, advertise across their chests, put on their bumper stickers, put on their license plates, right? That's the kind of marketing I think that higher ed needs. And thankfully, many organizations these days are embracing it. I think we're seeing the fruit of that.
Yeah. And I know that we had talked before we got on the recording here today is about the idea of, since you arrived at Purdue, kind of transforming that marketing communications from kind of being driven, that short order cook to being the driver or the chef. Tell us a little bit about, how that transformation's been going. I mean, it's been going through COVID-19. I think you've been doing some pretty impressive things in the middle of that. Maybe you can give us a little bit of an update on that.
Yeah, happy to. So you're right. We had to earn that bully pulpit.
Right.
So it really came from having the orientation and the charge from the board and the president on down to say, we are committed to having a high-powered marketing engine. And we're blessed to have that. Not everyone has that. Not everyone has that orientation. And that has to be a tailwind, I think, to a team's success. Number two, I got here in November of 18. And of the 54 individuals that were here at that time, 33 have gone to different pastures at this point, whether they retired, whether we moved them along, whether they took promotions, et cetera. And we've added 33 back during that period of time as well. We've added 25 individuals since the beginning of COVID. And the quality and the profile of those individuals is incredible. We're getting people, out of Borshoff, out of Matchbook. We just got the associate director of creative services out of Vera Bradley 2 weeks ago. She's on a Friday shooting the holiday spot the commercial for Vera Bradley in Sun Valley, Idaho, and she starts with us on a Monday thereafter because of her affinity for Purdue University and her ability now to remotely work. So we've had that transformation. But the big one is let's pivot. Let's pivot again from the posters to flyers. Let's pivot from the random acts of marketing. Let's pivot from the requests of the colleges, and instead let's create a movement. Let's create a movement that's really aligned and impactful and emotional and inspired by our brand. And let's get those 300, swimming with us, rowing with us. And that's what we've been able to do over the last couple of years.
Thank you, Ethan. I would love to know what you think is next for both you and your team at Purdue.
Yeah, what's next? I mean, it's always the pursuit of greatness right now. We're never done. I was asked the other day, will you have some time around the holidays, when your busy seasons, et cetera? I think higher ed marketers these days get it. It's never done, right? There's the next story, the next opportunity to tell, the next foray. There's postulating into the future and seeing what's coming, especially with demographic decline and the diversification of Gen Z, et cetera. So lots, right? But I'd say probably the most exciting thing that we're looking at is really moving from the mirror, which is still very powerful, Purdue University in West Lafayette, to becoming, a juggernaut portfolio in higher education. Now we have our high schools, and we're producing students that are coming to Purdue University. We've got our West Lafayette campus of 55,000, the top 10 most innovative, campus in America 4 times in a row now. Top 10 value, top 10 public, et cetera. We've got an amazing thing going in West Lafayette. We have our 2 regionals in Fort Wayne and in Purdue Northwest, in the northwest side of our state. But here at Purdue and West Lafayette as well, we've got our online offering, which was just ranked by Newsweek as the number 3 online education in America right now too. And as we build that to say you can have that fully branded Purdue University degree, whether you're in West Lafayette or you're at Albuquerque, that's the next, right? And bringing that under the portfolio. And then 60% over the age of 30 going back to school, fulfill purpose. And the stories are amazing. So hopefully, as we build out that portfolio, and the way you would with Hilton, the way you would with BMW, whatever it may be, within there, no matter where you're coming in your journey, there's a high quality Purdue University offering for you. Again, whether you're in Albuquerque or you're here, and then all of that spits out into an incredible product, which is Purdue for Life. This notion of lifelong learning, this notion that we're going to continue to be associated with those 600, 800,000 alumni, no matter where you graduated moving forward, Boilermakers, Purdue University brand, et cetera. So we're really focused on a portfolio that matters now and being really good no matter where you enter in that segment.
That's great. And I just a note that I wanted to say about that. I've been really impressed, and to hear you talk about it and to hear where it's going, the story of Purdue Global. I mean, President Daniels' vision and the board's vision to be able to see how to take a for-profit company, purchase that and pull it under the Purdue brand, and then to see you guys kind of merge that all together into the Purdue brand, I think is a great story. I'm curious to kind of continue to see that play out. But I think, again, that goes back to that business leaning that I think Mitch Daniels has. And I mean, he did a lot of very creative things as governor here in the state of Indiana. And I'm so excited to see him continuing to do that in higher ed as well.
Yeah, it's the 21st century land grant mission. I mean, that's the way we're articulating at this point in time. We're a land grant university. We were formed and created for that reason, to take education to the masses, to take practical application to the masses. And now we can transcend state lines using technology. I mean, that's incredible. We talk about one of the attributes of our brand being accessible prestige. Prestige through sustained excellence, not scarcity. And that's the idea of being able to take the Purdue brand wherever we need to with Purdue Global on students' terms, right, in ways that allow them to continue their schooling when life got in the way. And what they're telling us is challenge accepted, I'll do it. And so we had 2 amazing speakers on Friday to our board.
That's great.
Individuals who have persevered to their first and to their 3rd degrees using Purdue Global. Again, adult learners on their terms, getting valuable Purdue degrees, advancing their careers, advancing their families. It's the 21st century land grant mission for us, and we're committed.
Thank you, Ethan. You're such an innovative and inspiring leader. So as we come to a close, we'd like to ask you to share at least one takeaway that other marketing leaders could benefit from in higher education and can implement sometime in the very near future.
Yeah, I've thought about that question that you guys posed in advance, and I've thought about what we've tried to do with our culture. We have a culture that's founded on 4 values here in marketing, okay? 4 virtues, we talk about them: empowerment, optimism, excellence, and care. We want people that are going to come in the door forward-leaning with a positive attitude, with a very high bar who love and care for each other, right? But we were talking about the other day, what really drives some of that? And I think a lot of that is the curiosity that we're finding in the individuals and within the group of our culture. And so we're really committed to lifelong learning right now. We're consuming a lot of books. We're consuming a lot of podcasts, whether it's Tim Ferriss, whether it's Shane Parrish's Knowledge Project, whether it's yours, right? Whether it's the Higher Ed Marketer, whether it's Bart's emails. What I would encourage people to do is make sure that you're managing that schedule and allotting the time to lifelong learning, to curiosity, to continuing to absorb and capture that info and connect the dots. Because what I'm seeing on my staff right now is them take readings, take podcasts, take other institutions' best practices and connect the dots and say, how do we do that here? But, I think it was, you got several. You got Mark Twain, I think it was, that said, the person that can't read and the person that won't read are equal. And I think it was Hawking that said that the biggest threat to knowledge isn't ignorance, it's the belief that you know it all. I think our curiosity and I think our lack of ego, right, our humility combined turns us into really powerful learners and thus marketers. So I just encourage people to allot the time to consume, to think, to connect the dots, and then execute.
Thank you, Ethan. It's been a wonderful conversation with you. And for anyone that would like to reach out or connect with you, what would be the best way for them to do so?
I'm pretty easy to find. I'm Ethan Braden at Purdue.edu, and I'm our Ethan Braden on Twitter, but pretty married to the phone. So shoot me an email if there's something we can do to help or a resource we can provide or an idea we can kick around together. I just so appreciate the collaborative nature of the higher education market and the people have helped me along the way and those that I'd like to help if possible moving forward. So any way I can give it back, happy to.
Thank you. Bart, would you have any closing comments for us?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of pick up a little bit on what Ethan said there at the very end, that very last thing about being ongoing, lifelong learners. Another quote that I was thinking of when he was kind of quoting, Hawkins and Twain was Alvin Toffler. And what Alvin Toffler said was today where you can't walk in and say, oh, I know that marketing stuff, to be able to realize that, okay, it's changing rapidly and very fast. And you've got to be willing to put your ego aside and say, okay, what I knew yesterday doesn't apply to today. I have to relearn it for tomorrow. And I think that that's part of what I'm hearing. That's the success of a lot of what Purdue's doing. And I really love always talking to Ethan. And Ethan, thank you so much for being on the show. And it's been a pleasure to have you again.
The Higher Ed Marketer podcast is sponsored by Kaler Solutions, an education marketing and branding agency specializing in higher ed for over 20 years. And by Think Patented, a marketing execution company uniquely combining leading-edge print, mail, and digital marketing tools for higher yielding campaigns. Thanks, everyone, for giving us a listen.
You've been listening to The Higher Ed Marketer. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. If you're listening with Apple Podcasts, we'd love for you to leave a quick rating of the show. Simply tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. Until next time.